There's like 6 of us in here.
Really?
And then, well, 2 or 3 trickled in half an hour, 40 minutes later. That was good.
Alrighty. I think that goes okay. So, just figuring stuff on my screen. It's kind of not big enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. That's where we are. Yeah. Since last week, or next week is our last week, we're gonna have to basically go through practice final exams because, well, we don't have time to finish the rest due to people missing weeks or misplanning, however it worked out. I don't remember what the remaining chapters are, but we'll work through the final together and see if we can pass it. Practice final, so I wouldn't imagine it to be too much of a big deal. So work through it together, and any questions that you're not sure about, but I know, I'll try to help you get to the answer. So we're not gonna just go for whatever answer either one of us goes to. We're gonna come to an agreement kind of thing. Be like, yeah, that sounds right. We're like, yeah, that's definitely wrong. So we'll do that when the time comes. Cool. So RJ45 is the connector standard, not the actual cable standard. Important note. And that's solely for Ethernet. Fiber optic uses lasers. So it uses light instead of electricity going through wires. It's much faster. It can go much farther. It's not as susceptible to interference. However, it's much more delicate, much more expensive. Can't do tighter runs, so it can't do like sharp corners, and it's generally running its own individual conduit to keep it from being damaged. And these are just some of the typical ones. Most commonly you see this dual connector, one for sending, one for receiving. Sometimes you'll see this one and they'll have 2 of them that'll do the same thing this will do, except it's in a separate connector. This one is very uncommon now. It's been replaced by these 2. And I think at some point they show which ones are which. Multi-mode fiber uses LEDs, transmits multiple light signals at the same time, which allows it to it's supposed to be faster, but it's used for closer targets as opposed to things that are very far away. And it's slower, which it's very deceiving.
Well, no, I said different reflection angle, multiple reflection angles tend to disperse over long distances. Oh, disperse.
Okay. Yeah, that makes some sense. Okay. Single mode uses laser lights used for high transfer speed over long distances. However, single mode is also used for short distances, not necessarily only long distances, because of its high speed rate. It doesn't really make sense to use fiber in a very short distance in multi-mode fiber, because you get the same speeds as you get a Cat6 cable. So if you're doing very short distances, then it doesn't make sense to use multi-mode. So each end of the fiber, the devices have to be capable of using that type of fiber. Generally, they're custom cards that you plug into the device, customizable. It's usually very expensive. However, if you're looking for speed and distance, it's the way to go. Coax, basically that's primarily home use now. So the cable comes in, it splits off from your TV, and then the other end goes to your cable modem. They picture it on the next line. Yeah, here it is. So it's just a wire surrounded by insulation. Pretty generic. So the standards are rated by RG instead of RJ. And they have a, I don't know what impedance actually means. I don't remember being tested too much on coax. I wouldn't worry about it, to be honest. It's not really the most important thing to know. Just kind of that it's there. It's a standard that can be used for internet, but primarily in the home environment. F-type, so definitely see that at home. This should not be in here. So hubs are the main interconnection for older Ethernet networks, which is not anymore. No one uses hubs because they create too many broadcasts. They don't prevent broadcast domains. Neither do switches, but they send out broadcasts all over the place and junk up the network. So hubs are to be avoided. Yeah, it says second point right here. Any incoming signal is just relayed out of every other port every time the signal comes in. Yep. So I can't even read that. I already knew that. Now, the problem with hubs is that they look almost exactly the same as a switch visually. So you just have to look at the device and see if it says hub or switch on it. Generally, it's in tiny, tiny text, like right here. 3 count. So switches generally are used as intermediary devices, but they can also be used for routing purposes, such as VLANs, making sure that broadcast domains are kept to a minimum. But that's only if you have a layer 3 switch. If you have a layer 2, then it can't route. And that's a home grade switch, not an enterprise grade. In case that wasn't obvious. Bridges connect two Ethernet networks. They use completely different media. However, it is once again possible to have interfaces with the same type of media, but it's unlikely. At home, this is a good example. Home routers automatically do this, but they actually bridge your LAN network, your internal, with your wireless, so that your wireless doesn't have its own independent network. So you don't see that, but that's what it's doing. Next, okay. And I guess you can just see a visual representation of what it actually does. But it's easier just to think of it as a way to connect two different interfaces easily. Usually you don't have to have a physical device like that. It does its software based.
I've seen that in the industrial area.
New equipment? Or
Well, it's in industrial kind of stuff as if it works with it.
yeah, in fairness, yes.
So yeah, I've seen it. Correct.
Sure. But I mean, if you buy new stuff, it has it in the software.
You know, if they do new stuff, it's usually Ethernet or fiber cable.
Yeah. Sure. It is a great point. Network attached storage. It's a headless system that hosts files. It could host a web server, a number of things. But basically, the main key things about those is that they have redundant drives. They should. They usually do. Well, I mean, I have my own at home that I custom build, but you can buy boxes that are pre-built like these. That will give you like 4 drives that you can put in your own drive. Whenever they work, it's just not. I like to have more control over my hardware and software. There isn't really much to be said about them, they just work. Routers connect LANs using TCP/IP, and to have an internet connection, you'd have to have 2 interfaces physically. It'll take more than 12 seconds. So, take full home power. This is like almost Cisco grade. If everything was the same manufacturer, then I would be like, hold on. So TIA EIA is a standard for the physical wiring and cable structure inside the cable, not to be confused with the RJ45 standard, which is just the connector on the end. They handle creating the new standards for Cat 5, Cat 5e, Cat 6, and so on. Cable basics of stars. So I guess they're just referring to different cable topologies that you can do in your network, redundant or non-redundant. Of course, the more redundant you want it, the more expensive it will be. Because you need more ports, the equipment to handle it, the equipment that's capable of recognizing when a device has had a problem or a failure and knows to flip over to the other device so that they're not creating network loops. That's very typical. But if you have a really big business, you'll have many, many telecommunications rooms or server rooms. They take on many names. Just as a note to people who are not sitting in the room, it's not always in the ceiling. It could be in the walls, it could be in the floor. And especially if you have internal wiring in a server room, you could have a raised floor where the wiring is actually underneath the floor, which is most common because it allows you to keep everything out of the way while all your equipment is above. And that's really nice, keeps things neat, especially when you have tons and tons of equipment. You don't want wiring getting in the way. much to be said here. Well, TIA, EIA standards also dictate, is a strong word, that you run your wires a certain way so that you don't create fire hazards. Like running network wire right next to electrical wire parallel is a horrible idea. Several reasons. Fire and interference are the two primary reasons, especially interference. So you always run them perpendicular to each other, or never intersect them if you can. So there's two types of cable standards, UTP and STP. So unshielded pairs versus shielded pairs. And the shielded, exactly what it sounds like, it prevents any interference from getting into the cable and messing with your signals. So the difference between solid and stranded: solid can run over longer distances and it can handle higher speeds over those distances. Stranded is generally for patch cables, and solid is for runs. So you'll have solid from like your server room patch panel all the way to the back of the wall jack, and then you'll have stranded going from the front of the plate to the computer itself. Cheap. It's cheaper than solid. And short distances, it works really well.
Just looking at it, yeah, I've used dash panels now, they purchased.
It's not required to do it one way or the other. It's just common. Kind of just said that. I guess all equipment racks are 19 inches wide. However, they do have different heights, which are measured in U's. And if I remember, I don't remember how big a U is. It's, I think so. So that's one of the biggest ones you can get. I think it's like 48U, if I remember. I don't know why they didn't just. I guess it's easier than saying, 120-inch rack or whatever. So this would be a 2U. No, hold on. It's 1, 2. Yeah, it looks 2U, but because the picture zoomed in, it's kind of hard to get a perspective. Okay. Well done. Patch panel, a box with a row of female connectors in the front, permanent connections in the back. I should argue, there are newer patch panels which are modular, meaning that you can actually swap out individual ports on the patch panel, so they're not permanently wired in. Basically, it's a lot like wiring in how you wire jacks in your house, where they actually snap into the wall jack, like the plate. It's like those, but they're higher grade. They are more resistant to movement. They get moved around or anything like that. They're also more resistant to interference or individual wires getting moved to the point where they get pulled out or contacting other ones if they're poorly made. So you can actually replace individual jacks if they go bad or the wires go bad. So it's really great. You don't have to, those are painful. The permanently wired ones. At least in my experience, they're painful. Just because the wires are really close together. So those are permanently wired ones, but the modular ones, each individual port would actually come out, and they just pivot in, snap right in. They're more expensive, but it saves you a lot of time. I have one of those. Easy to lose. Okay.
With labels.
I did.
Hmm?
I do. It drives me nuts.
You always come upon something like that.
You're like, whoever did this, you're in trouble. And then good luck trying to find out where that goes. If you're in a giant, giant business, what are you gonna do? Yeah, like my dad works at Aurora. Okay, so he goes at different hospitals whenever he's needed to go there. There might be 5, 6 closets in an individual hospital, and they're huge. Some of them are smaller than others, but where did you start? I mean, I guess you could plug something in and view an ARP table and then trace that to an IP address, but that's assuming the device is on when you're trying to replace the label.
Well, I mean, you've got the vanilla cable testers.
Which is great if you want to go to each individual jack and plug it in.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it could help narrow it down if you just found it and
I guess.
make an assumption, but
well, unless the others are logically, labeled where they're like, by department or something like that, or by floor maybe. Each row is a floor or something. Then maybe you could guess and get closer. No, it would not. Usually that's why they label it right as they put the patch panel in. Just do it right away.
Or you get the cable wrong and the system.
Yeah, luckily he doesn't have to punch down the blocks, but the front wiring, yep. Yep. So, you need to connect stuff. I know, it's surprising. You have to actually plug it in.
Troubleshooting 101.
Is your computer on? Have you tried restarting it? Is your cable chewed through by a bunny rabbit? I actually had an extension cord chewed through by a rabbit. Or a rat, who knows. But, with Christmas lights up, and then you put them away, and it's cold when you're putting them away after Christmas. So you don't look at the cables, you just kind of toss them in the box. Mm-hmm. And then, next year comes, you open the box, you plug everything in, you turn it on to test it, like, you look at the wire, it's like hanging out. You must have bitten through it when it was off, because 115 volts through a rabbit, it would be sitting here. I don't know. I worked a job once where I was making patch panel cables. Fun. It's worth just buying them.
The first time I did it, I went through about 8 ends. Made one cable.
Mm-hmm.
And I took the wrong end off, thinking I knew what I did over there. I put it back together and did the same thing twice.
Oh, the funny thing is, like, when I'm watching someone do it for the first time, and they make one end the A standard, and they make the other the B standard. Plug it in. Why isn't it working? And I look at the ends, and I'm like, well, you crimped it properly, but your wires are in the wrong place. Start over. Ka-chunk. Hey, what'd you do that for? You can't reuse the ends. It's too late. Point of no return once you clamp down. Yep, you've done that. That's not properly crimped. No, it's supposed. The blue insulation is supposed to be wear up, so it actually. Yeah, that's what that tab is for. I didn't make this PowerPoint. It wasn't me. I'm indifferent about boots. I love them because they keep the tabs from being broken up, but I hate them because they make it really hard to unplug the cable.
Yeah, completely down.
You're like,
And then after a few years when you get hard, it's good stupid things.
you're like pliers on them.
Jackknife off.
Just a hunting knife to cut through it. What? I don't even know what that is. I don't know what that is, but it's garbage. Oh, that's what they mean. See, that's part of the thing about this silly exam. This is a work area outlet. So I guess a work area is where someone sits during the day or stands during the day and does their job.
Well, not in this instance, right?
This is what I'm confused about. I guess it's where the cables come to the workstation. I guess. Yep. Ooh, fun. Here we go. That's not anything new. I'm not going to get into that. Basically, anything that has been learned in previous classes, I'm going to kind of breeze through. You know what an IP address looks like. You know what a subnet is? I think that was a yes. Those who are watching the recorded version can just pause and read it, because it's it's really easy. One thing you might get tested on, and I think that's on this next slide, is something like this. Kind of like what addresses are within each range. So everyone really knows the 192 range because that's generally what you have at your house. But you might also want to know the ranges for A and B, and then the mask that's typically used with those. So typically you would have a /24 address, which would give you 254 usable addresses on your network. And then on here you could have a /16, which would give you this many, and a /8 would give you this many. If you don't know what those are, head over to Google and just type in CIDR table, CIDR. Here you go. And then there's a PIPA, which is an odd innovation in itself because technically it can be used as a routing protocol instead of using A, B, or C. However, every single device on the network has to use a PIPA for it to work, and anyone else you want to communicate with, including clients on the internet. So it's highly impractical. But it's a way of knowing that your DHCP doesn't work, which I guess helps. Yeah, this is important. It's not required for the router to have any specific IP address. It can have any IP address. The only exception is that you want to make sure when you're setting it that you're not setting the router in the range that the DHCP server is using, because you don't want that address to be in the way. If, however, you feel the need to do that, you have to do an additional step to make sure that that address is reserved to the MAC address of your router, and the IP address is saved associated with that MAC address, so it's not handed out to any other user, and it'll cause all kinds of conflicts if you don't do the reservation. So it's just easier to set the IP address to the first address or any address outside of the DHCP range. And of course, if you have any servers in your network, make sure they're not the same on there as well. Just a simple switching network. And that would be a Class C network. That would be a Class C connecting to Class A network. No, Class B, I believe.
Does it go to
Yeah,
something?
yeah, it would be A. A should only be used if necessary. So you should only use the network that you need for, there's a formula for it, but you calculate how much you want to allow for expansion for future devices, router switches, what have you, new APs. So there's a formula that you use to calculate how many addresses you need in a 5-year span or whatever. So you don't want to automatically go to an A address because you'll have way too many addresses. But you don't want to do a C if you have 250 addresses right now because you're almost certain to get there. You know, if someone brings their phone in and then another person brings their phone in, you're really close. So something to keep in mind. And that's going into subnetting, which is not in the scope of this at all. TCP is connection oriented, which means it checks the data and sends it in a different way than UDP does. So TCP sends the data and it checks, it communicates back and forth to check it. The data that it's sent has been received, and it'll only send the data that wasn't received. Whereas UDP just says, oh, you didn't receive everything, and it just spews it all back again. It doesn't really care about data delivery being high quality or not. So that's why TFTP is used with UDP, because it's generally small files that aren't as important for reliable delivery.
So what's the thought process of using UDP for streaming?
It's a horrible idea because
Okay,
it's a horrible.
Me thinking that,
no, UDP is a horrible idea for streaming because it doesn't verify your connection and guarantee delivery of service. So when you have TCP, it says, okay, we'll just use, I don't know, let's say you're going to Google. Say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm looking for google.com. It'll say, oh, that's me. And then it'll come back, be like, can I have a connection? Send it over. Yes, you can. Boom. And then after that, you start your communication, and that repeats over and over and over and over. And that's how TCP works. It happens so fast, it makes it sound slow when you explain it. UDP skips the part about asking if he's there. It just goes, oh, here's the data, and it just fires it off. So, so that's when you get ping in the mix, and you kind of coordinate separately to make sure that where you're sending your data is currently there, because UDP doesn't care if the data gets there in the correct order. Maybe they explain that in the next slide. Yeah. Part of the problem with UDP is this right here, readiness to send and receive data. So TCP does that part of the process where it says, hey, I want to send you some data. Are you able to receive that? You say, yes, I can receive that data. Say, okay, here you go. And then UDP would say, hey, here's some data. Just fires it off. And you could respond back, hey, that's not what I asked for. And it'll spew it all back again. Whereas with TCP, if you say, okay, I got the data, but it's not exactly what I wanted, it'll go, okay, which parts did you get? It'll fire it back, only that part. So it does it in the right order, it's more consistent, but it is slower than UDP. So this kind of explains.
Make up the difference in speed then.
Yes. So you get speed, but you don't guarantee delivery. Yeah, moving on. Never mentioned all that again. Just never even think about enabling it. Just pretend the option isn't even available. It's just so easy to not use it. Okay. Kinda already said that. This is really like a really odd diagram. I don't know why they did it like this. This kind of encompasses how the internet works. All the internet is a collection of LAN networks connected through a central hub. So you have many, many different relays throughout the world that connect to each other through super high-speed connections under the ocean. And all it does is connect individual networks together. So your network could connect to Time Warner, my network could connect to Time Warner, and that's what makes up the internet. It's just a bunch of networks hosting things and sending back and forth. I mean, all Google.com is just a LAN network connected to their ISP, and we connect to ours. Maybe they connect together, and then we get to Google. And that's all it is. Not anything really special. That's an older router. It only has like 2 ports on it. I don't know why that is. I guess. Let's see, you get a screenshot. Yeah, so I'm sure you've done this, but basically you just right click on the connection, go to properties, and then you can go into the options and change any settings related to IP, VPNs, and so on. It also allows you to switch between DHCP and static. So here would be DHCP, this would be static. Yeah. So the default is always DHCP, even on server software. And as soon as you install it on any server, they'll tell you right away, hey, you should change your server to static, because if your IP address changes, then you're not going to be able to access the data by the references that you currently have, unless you use DNS. Hey, what do you know? There it is. Speak of the devil. So, DNS is resolving names to IP addresses, such as google.com. The IP address is not google.com. Actually, they have many, many IPs for redundancy's sake. Every command in Windows has this. And Linux, for that matter. They have a different format of finding it, but once again, out of the scope. You can use renew to get a new IP address, or it will check the DHCP server to make sure that that address that you currently have is still available on the server. Releases to go with the address you currently have. So if you're trying to do kind of like a reset on your adapter, you would do ipconfig release, and then you would run renew, and that would basically get rid of your current IP and then renew to a new one. Basically the equivalent of unplugging your cable and plugging it back in, but it's a more guaranteed way to make sure that you actually get a new IP address or a current one. NSLOOKUP, resolving a host name to an IP address or an IP address to a host name. It does both. Yeah, so like that. Traceroute shows the route to the host that you specify. So in this case, he was trace routing to chivalry.com, which was resolved to that IP address. Each hop is a router in between your current IP address and that DNS name or IP address that you enter in. So this would be the router that, or the gateway of whatever machine this is, and then each of these hops is a router from his gateway to that name. Traceroute can also be useful to determine connection problems if you can't reach a host that you know is up and functioning. And Traceroute is available in all operating systems, including Cisco, which is nice. I kind of mentioned that. I wouldn't worry about that. I'm going to skip over anything IPv6 because I wouldn't worry about it, and I hate it. It's nice to type in, but it's horrible to subnet. Just to make it so long. Last 64 bits of an IPv6 address are generated randomly or using the MAC address, leaving a maximum of 64 bits for the network ID. Therefore, no subnet is ever longer than 64. Okay. And then there's IPv6 global addresses, which are different. And those are only addresses assigned to WAN interfaces, so any internet accessible address. ipconfig all is nice if you need more information than your basic IP configuration that you can find in the network connections menu. Okay. So 3 things to have network connectivity: physical NIC, or the actual connection on the machine, protocol, so software side, the actual IP device has to be able to support the method of communication, and then the actual interface to speak with the protocol. Previous chapters we kind of went over NIC speed, so duplex and full duplex. So full duplex is the ability to send and receive at the same time, whereas half duplex is only being able to send or receive at the same time, which is slower. However, you should be aware of link lights. There are two sets of lights on every NIC. One light indicates a link, one indicates activity. Now, it says the LEDs can be any color, but orange and green are the only two colors you'll see. One of the lights will always be orange. The other one, the link light, which indicates the actual state of the connection, if it's connected to anything, can be green for a gigabit connection, gigabit I should say, gigabit connection, or if it's orange, it's either 10 megabit or 100 megabit connection. So that's what that indicates, and you can kind of tell if your cable has been made incorrectly. If it says 1000 base T on it and it's giving you an orange light, then you have a problem either in your cable or on connectivity on some end. Pretty lights. Just set that. Just an example. This one's orange on the switch. Indicates a 100 or 10 base T connection speed, and that could be as a result of the end device being too slow, the cable that's plugged in isn't supporting it, or the cable hasn't been made correctly, so it's not operating at its full potential, which can always happen. They don't, though. There isn't a standard, but they don't, just to stay consistent, because they have no reason to confuse everyone. No one hates us that bad. Wake on LAN. Wake on LAN is a feature that you can use to actually power up a PC by sending a magic packet, which is actually what it's called, believe it or not, that you send that specifically targets the MAC address of that NIC. And it contained within that package is basically a message saying, hey, it's time to wake up. It's kind of like an alarm, but it's specifically focused at that machine. So it sends a broadcast to locate where that machine is on the network, and then it will wake it up once that machine detects it. Of course, on the machine, you have to have the machine actually waiting for that packet, even in its powered off state. So not every machine supports it, and you also have to have it enabled, which is why a lot of people that are paranoid about cybersecurity will actually power off their machines and then they'll unplug their NICs. So people that have already compromised their PC can't power it back up and keep working at it. Generally, what you have to do before you even do this is you have to go in your BIOS and enable Wake on LAN. But then after you do that, you might have to go into Windows and enable it in Power Management. Of course, Wake on LAN only works over like physically cabled connections. They do not work over Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi does not keep a constant connection. They have a picture, that would be nice. Yeah. It's what it looks like. It's similar to that in Windows 7 to share a folder. I'm sure they have a screenshot of it. Those are just permissions. saying who can access that file. There's different types of permissions. There's NTFS permissions, which are which individual users can access the files versus which users can access the share. So sharing permissions are just on the share, and NTFS is actual file and folder access. So you can get really granular out of the scope once again. Full control is exactly as it sounds. You can do anything to it except change the owner. Only the owner can change the owner, and the owner can do anything to the file at any time, regardless of what his or her permissions are changed to, as long as that person is still the owner. So you can either go to network, find the PC being broadcasted, and open its share that way, or you can map a drive, which will perform the same function except it's a persistent connection, unless you uncheck this box here. And you can browse to it, or if you're a business that's more secure, you have a share $ share, which would make it hidden, and you would have to actually know the name of the share to locate it. So the UNC path is a network path that points to a folder or file. So as opposed to the C: path, it's a path directly to the network file. So pretty self-explanatory. NetView. So you can use that to display shares on a machine. NetUse you can use to map drives. So NetUse and then whatever drive letter you want it to be, server name, and then the share. You're not going to ever use that. Sharing printers. It's a similar process to the way you share folders. You just go into properties on the printer, click share, name the actual name of the printer, and then you're good to go. Generally, what is done in the corporate environment is that you have a network printer shared on a central server, generally the Active Directory server, and then you can deploy that printer to your clients via a group policy by user basis. So basically the same kind of idea as other troubleshooting processes. Just start lowest on the OSI layer, so start physical, and then just keep moving up until you get to the application layer if you need to get that far. Generally it's something really obvious, like a physical cable not being plugged in all the way, or it got bumped. Yep. Sometimes NICs do go bad. It happens. If the NIC is bad, replace it. Yeah, you know, no big deal, just replace it. Not like, you know, you would have to resolder that on or anything. Then I'm just sending it into the manufacturer. You can buy pretty cheap cable testers that will do the trick. They're just measuring to make sure that the wires coming in on one end and going out the other end are the same. So you have a loopback device and a micro scanner, and they both have batteries in them. And then all it does is relays the signal back. So it sends out a signal and then it gets sent right back and listens for the exact same signal. If it hears it, then it knows that the connection was successful. Oh, toners are nice too. I love toners. So you plug a tone generator in one end, which is a battery in it, and it just sends a certain frequency through the wire, and then a toner probe you just kind of hold by the wire, and each one will have a certain level of noise that it generates naturally, and that's just because of the electricity going through the wire. However, when you stick the tone probe by the correct wire, it'll be much louder than the other ones, so you'll know pretty quickly. Yeah, so that's what they look like. Yeah, just reason this because it's things that we have done before. Take 5. I need some water. We sure hope that these wires are not connecting here. That's just a horrible idea. And they're not plugged in. Yeah, and the power isn't plugged in, so I guess it doesn't work.
It's kind of like plugging the electrical cord into the power.
Infinite power.
Petrol.
I beat the system. 802.11 is standard for Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth uses radio waves as well. And how much do we said VM? That's such an old laptop. Usually there's just a chip built in. But the older ones, you can still buy these, and they work. They're pretty nice. I don't like these because USB is pretty slow. PCI will be faster. But if you have a laptop and the wireless card went bad, it's really the only option you have. Unless you have an older one that has one of those slots. I don't remember what the official standard is, but one of those laying around too. Wireless access point, just a device that hosts internet wirelessly. Bluetooth is a can communicate both ways. I was trying to find a way there. And you have to pair it with whatever device you're connecting to, and that's kind of their form of security. But it has a limited range of, it's like 20 feet or something like that. They always measure it in meters, it confuses me. Home routers actually function as a router, a switch, and a firewall. So it's not truly only a router. So first bullet point everyone knows about, but the second one, power over Ethernet, is very common in the enterprise environment because it's easier to run power over Ethernet to a wireless access point than it is to run power and Ethernet. You pay for the power over Ethernet device or injector to power it. However, you don't have to run that power. So trade-off, depending on how many you have, it might be worth it, it might not be worth it. PoE switches are expensive though. So usually injectors are what you end up going with. Alright. CSMA CA, collision avoidance, which is used in wireless. And that helps to make sure that various wireless connections to the same access point do not conflict with each other. And that's done automatically, you don't have to worry about that. I'm waiting to see if they get to CM CD. CSMA CD, I think it is. Peer-to-peer mode, ad hoc, is what it's known as. It's not used that often. There's so much Wi-Fi everywhere now, it doesn't even matter. Alright. I do remember being tested on this though. Know the difference between BSS and EBSS. So between BSS, EBSS, infrastructure mode, and ad hoc, kind of want to know those, definitely. because while you may not actually use them, you want to be aware.
No, for both the BSS and BSS or infrastructure, but not in like that.
No, I do not think so. Nope, totally different. IBSS. So I guess maybe the picture mode. So this is kind of what infrastructure mode looks like. So infrastructure is the most common. And basic service set is common in like home environment, and then EBSS is common in work environment. Medium to large building sizes, because you need to have your wireless span the entire building with the same SSID, but it's difficult to do that without multiple access points. So basically they all broadcast the same signal, but they use this to make sure that they're not conflicting with each other. Where's my mouse? There's. Alright. Service set identifier, and that's just the name of the wireless network. And that can be anything you want it to be, but there's a length restriction on it that no one usually hits. 4 methods. Okay. So there's a default one that comes on each home router. Change it right away. Also change the default password on the web interface. You wouldn't believe it, but it's actually one of the most common reasons that people get their wireless hacked, because the default usernames and passwords are out there for people that are like, how do I get into my router? Well, here's the default thing that came with it. They're like, well, why do I change it? I'll just forget it. And then they can't help me. MAC filtering, you can do is basically set your wireless access point to only allow clients that have MAC addresses in a list to connect. Additionally, you can also make sure you can do it the other way, where it's a blacklist, meaning that you will not allow people that have a certain MAC address. Generally, you do it as a whitelist, where you only allow in the ones that you put in. This is important. Shouldn't be hard to remember if you're asking about wireless and they ask you about an ACL. Web. Never use web, but know what it is and all of the improvements that came between web and WPA and WPA2. So WPA uses TKIP, that's the way that's pronounced, Temporal Key Integrity Protocol. It's highly improved over web, because web does not encrypt end-to-end, meaning that it does not encrypt on all layers of the OSI model that is possible to encrypt on. So you obviously can't encrypt on a physical layer, so it's. However, in WPA2, they use AES, which is significantly improved over TKIP. So a lot of times what you'll see is access points that will offer the capability to do TKIP and AES as encryption. You don't want to use TKIP because it's just another way that they can get in. It's like, hey, they're not fully using it, but I might be able to use that as a foothold to get in. So just keep in mind. WPS is a horrible idea as well. Never use it. It's easy to crack. The idea is that it makes it easy to connect. You just push a button and the person connects. Or it has a list of It's usually like 5-digit numeric digits that you use to connect. And I mean, think about it. There's only so many combinations of 6-digit numerical numbers, so it doesn't take long with modern devices. And it's just this tiny button here, and you'll see that little circular symbol symbolizing that it's for WPS. Yep. I haven't even ever looked at this. You can hide your SSID, but there are applications that can figure out what it is even if you hide it. In addition, what this slide points out is you can move your physical access point to only have enough range to cover the area of the building and not outside the building. So you can make sure that people can't sit outside your building and get into your Wi-Fi, or if you have an open network for guests, that they don't hop on that. I hope they're not 2 megabytes, but I guess if you have a slow enough speed, it could be. But of course, it's kind of a confusing bullet point because wireless itself is far faster than 2 megabytes. Actually, most of them support over 100 megabits per second now. It's just a matter of how fast your physical internet connection is. However, as you get farther away, your actual speed goes down as your range goes down. Said that earlier. In a home environment, there's also wireless extenders, which you can use to relay the signal of your access point if you have a larger house. Home routers don't support EBSS unless you put custom firmware like DDWRT on your router, which is only supported on most routers, but not all of them. And you can actually do the same thing as EBSS, but with home routers. So it's kind of cool. They add a lot of features in there that you usually only have in the business environment. It's not 5.8, it's 5. And and 2.4 is correct, I believe. I don't know why. Anyway. This is important to note. I specifically remember them testing me on these 2 rows here. So how far can each standard go, and what frequencies is it capable of? How fast can it go? Ideally, in the perfect situation where there's no interference, nothing in the way, realistically this means you're sitting right next to it. And what features does it support? Other than that, don't worry about any of this down here. Just basically these first columns. You want me to wait, or let you write it down, or do you want me to move on? The interesting thing is that A actually came after B, but yet B is used more commonly than A is because it has a further range, even though it's slower. Kind of interesting. But other than the range and frequency, they are range, frequency, and throughput, they're the same. And they're all backwards compatible, which is good. So if your laptop supports G, then it can connect to V and A. If it supports N, it can go to N and anything below. V and A are not really common anymore. Mostly see G, N, and now AC standard, but AC won't be on the exam. AC is pretty cool though. That whole chart basically summarized what this is. I don't know why you would ever use this in modern era. I wouldn't even bother worrying about that.
Have TV remote.
I guess. Bluetooth pans. So personal area networks, basically just very specific things such as keyboards, mice, and headsets. And they each have their own signature so that they don't conflict with each other. They do have pretty decent range. The range depends on the actual transmitter and if there's anything in the way. So the most common is class 2. Class 1 is pretty, you won't really see it that much. 100 meters is kind of nice though. Sometimes you'll see that on things like wireless Bluetooth speakers. You can go pretty far with those before they disconnect. Where'd it go? Oh. There it is. Okay. Just a quick idea for some of these aren't up to date. Like cellular speeds now are much faster. I don't know. Did we go over that? I mean, really, the main ones. No Bluetooth, no Wi-Fi. No, those two, you're bound to be okay. Keep that not relevant. Bam. Yeah, there's a picture here. So each manufacturer of the actual LAN cards have their own utility you can install if you need to. Don't install anything unless you need to. They all have the same basic configuration. What's the SSID? What's the encryption method? And what's the shared key or password to get into it? And then this is just the most common mode. The access points are okay, but I don't trust the cards. Admin is usually what it is. A lot of them still look like this. Okay, Mac filtering page. So it doesn't allow you to, on this one at least, do whitelist and blacklist. On this particular one, you can either do whitelist for all of them or blacklist for all of them. So generally, whitelist is what's done on a home network, but I can't really think of a situation where you would use blacklist. Why? There's zero reason to use web. It's annoying to set up. The keys are really long, and it is really insecure. I can have the same password for WPA2 that I have for web. It'll take me 5 seconds to crack web. It could take me days to crack WPA2. And if someone knew that you were trying to crack it, they could change it in a minute and, game over. So, the nice thing though, wireless cracking, you can do without the person ever knowing. Now D-links I have a hard grudge against. I really don't like D-links. They really rub me the wrong way.
I didn't at first. It was really getting a lot of negative. And the negative got the connections over there.
I've had the opposite experience.
Yeah. I think it had to do with the age, the generation.
Yeah.
Because I've used that years after.
Ideally, it should be in the center, but how often does that actually happen? I mean, who puts a... I mean, this is a hallway. Who puts a wireless access point in the middle of the hallway? It would have to be on the ceiling, and who puts a wireless access point on their ceiling in their house? It doesn't work that way. It's probably like in this office or... Yeah, it's, probably in one of these offices or in this corner. Yeah, it's not going to be right there. So omnidirectional, it's exactly the same as using one of these, except you get better range because it's a bigger antenna. That's all it is. So, we don't know how Bluetooth works. You make it discoverable. You click on the device that has the human-friendly name. You say Andrew's phone or whatever I might call it, just so my friend can recognize it. He taps on it, and then mine pops up with a code. It says, is this the code that's on the other person's screen? And 99% of the time it's the exact same code, so you just tap yes. Of 03. This is actually iPack Windows Mobile. I actually have an iPack. It's pretty nice still, but I'll get off track here. It's really outdated. Just reason by here. I really don't think you're going to run into a third, so I'm just going to... Before even thinking that it's the Wi-Fi, check to see if other devices are having problems with it. If no one else is having a problem, then it's just you. So figure out what's wrong with your device. That's always a good place to start. Is your physical settings working? Do you have software that's disabling it? Or maybe your wireless access point is screwed up if everyone's having an issue. They don't need a firmware upgrade, but it's usually available. kind of what we just said. Just make sure you're pointing towards the correct SSID and encryption, and then of course the passphrase is correct. How close are you to the access point? That'll determine how well it connects and how quick the speed is.
You know that zero config service causing trouble.
Yeah. XP wireless config connect is just a pain. It's like, oh, make it easy using this wizard. It would be easy, they said.
Conflicted with the manufacturer's one, figure out why everything open.
Next. This one is bigger, so I'm assuming it has a lot of sides. How much time do we have? Is it 8 or 8:30? This goes to 123 sides. Jeez. Alright, I'm just gonna. Hopefully, I can kind of breeze through unnecessary slides. Because this is really long, I don't think we're going to finish it. Tier 1 is the backbone. 7 to 12 companies, and they all interconnect together to create the internet. And then Tier 2 is ISPs. And they have redundancy on each tier to make sure that the internet in specific areas never actually goes down, automatically reroutes. And they use TCP/IP as well because it's a standard. So connecting to the ISP requires a modem, whether that be a cable modem or a DSL modem. Sometimes a ISP to a business will have a fiber connection, reliability. Usually the initial install is by an ISP technician, but if you're more technical, they can just mail it to you and you can do it yourself. Methods that we already really know about. Functions of the modem converts analog signals into digital and digital into analog. So depending on which direction communication is going, it could be digital or analog. So analog with a modem is on the side that's going to the ISP, and then it's digital on the side that's used on the computer side. Yay, pictures to explain things. So CPUs can't directly read it, but the UART converts it for them. You know, I bet the newer modems do. I mean, DSL modems probably have the chip built in now. I mean, it's literally just a chip, so it's not like it's very complex. Change that to megabits and it's my connection at home.
Yeah, of course it can be 6 licenses.
What do you get at home? Is it like a 10 meg?
No, I get 2 meg when the wind goes there.
What do you pay for? Like, what are you supposed to get?
1. It's just not
You consistently get 1 at least.
yeah, so what it does is on the download, you can get 2 to maybe 2.5. But it's a wireless point to point, and you have they call them basically it's called a bucket, and the bucket size is about 300 meg. So you'll get that 2 or 2.5 for the first 300 meg, and after that it goes on to
Interesting.
and so I download something and it was download that long and I'm done, and then somebody else tries to download, and the bucket will get refilled. So,
Oops.
and
They don't know it was used, so it's okay.
300 meg was okay when it first came out. 25 years ago.
Well, not meg. 300 megabits. Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you're going from
Just
sharing without connection.
trying to make a phone call. Mom, get off the phone. I want to go on the internet.
I put in 2 lines on the internet. So I had that in mind, but no, it was more when you had to share that internet connection. You had dial up and then somebody else said, "Oh, where's the email?"
So, same functions, just different utilities. All internet is handled through these utilities. If you're using dial-up still, which some people are, you have to get some of these things are what you would need. There are other things as well, but dial-up is surprisingly easy to set up. It's a good thing that Ethernet just automatically, theoretically works when you just plug the cable in. So that's how that works. Connection name has nothing to do with the connection actually functioning. That's just your human readable name to it. Point-to-point protocol. It's actually an encapsulation protocol to connect to your ISP. Style up browser users. ISDN. Yeah. It's safe enough to say that dial-up is kind of bad. I mean, people have at least moved to very low-grade DSL because it's so cheap. You don't have a reason to stay with dial-up.
Yeah, but when you get into an area where it's not physically available,
I guess it depends.
Too far from CO, and my house is technically.
Well, yeah, if you live in the middle of nowhere, I guess.
It's not technically the middle of nowhere, but
You'd be like between Wisconsin and Waldrop. Anywhere in between. You're in dial-up. Coming up, Waldrop. Okay. Oh, faster than dial-up. I'm really good. There. Okay, good. Cable connections. 20 plus megabits per second is possible. It doesn't mean you'll actually get that, but theoretically, the fastest speeds you can actually get right now, depending on your ISP in your area, is actually 100 megabits per second. That's actually available now.
50 or 60 is
It's
being advertised
very
by
limited.
Charter or whatever. But
Yeah, it's very limited. Time Warner is starting to roll it out. They actually offer 100 megabits per second, which is awesome. Expensive, but awesome. Some of my friends share an apartment with 4 guys. You know, they all have jobs. So splitting rent and internet 4 ways is like dirt cheap each. It's like, it's the way to go. Let's get the papers. I don't really think I need to. I have a case like that. And a router like that. Don't have any patch panels though. It would be something cool to have.
no, it's starting to roll that out.
I literally have no opinion on this. Or feedback. It's DSL.
Yeah, I heard some AT&T in Milwaukee was selected. They were supposed to be going up.
Probably. I mean, AT&T and Time Warner are basically the 2 most popular ISPs right now.
Did AT&T merge with one of those cable companies?
I don't remember.
No one tells us when we just talking.
Let me see. One of the options when I started typing merge in Google was merge with Verizon. If it loads, then I'll bring it up. There. Wow, that took forever. Oh. DirecTV. It says DirecTV is now a part of AT&T. I think DirecTV merged into AT&T, not the other way around. Yeah. No, not really.
I don't know what they're. My brother-in-law just told me about it.
No idea. Okay. Continuing on. It looks like every other gateway, except it sucks. Any ISP gateway that is combined as a modem, router, and wireless access point is just horrible. Everyone hates them because they are not good. Cellular connections. So most common right now are 3G and 4G. However, cop cars actually have 2G wireless access points for their laptops accessing their records, which require low speeds because it's just database connections. So they don't need super fast connections, which is probably part of the reason why you're sitting in your car so long and waiting for the officer to walk up. He's been sitting in his car and you're wondering why he's sitting there so long. This is probably why. If I had to guess, I don't know for sure. Very much to save.
What speed did they say 4G was at?
What? No, apparently not. If you live in an area where you can't get anything but satellite.
We did that for our work business.
Really?
We were sharing dial-up with 5 users. And We ended up with a direct input internet dish. That's 400K down. People just yeah. It was still 56 out.
But hey, it's a big deal from dial-up to satellite with that speed. So NAT is employed by default on all home routers, and that allows you to have one IP for all of your addresses going out, which is technically PAT, but I don't think they cover that. They don't go that far. But anyway, I'm getting all Cisco flowing through my mind. Exams coming up. Like I said, single IP address. You don't need more than one because you can go through that one IP address with every single device in your infrastructure. There you go. Nothing more needs to be said. Just a newer version than what we saw earlier. Same thing that you do on your PC, except that's the IP address that your PC needs to point to, which if you use DHCP like most clients, it'll just automatically grab it. DHCP is on by default, so, oh, what do you know, there you go. And you don't want to have more than one DHCP server at any network because they'll conflict with each other. Very bad. Generally, home addresses are dynamic, but they change infrequently except if you reboot your modem. A lot of times your external IP will be renewed to a new IP, but if you never have to restart it, you'll basically have the same IP for a long time. But it's not guaranteed. So you pay money to have it static, and then you're guaranteed to have that IP, which is nice if you're hosting services and you want to have something static to point to. I've literally never used that, but there were a couple times I wanted to.
We had to use that for our dial-up. Yeah. Share the internet connection.
So do you have a dedicated PC that connected and then the others just went through it?
Our server was dialed up and these guys see us and they
There you go.
and then that was the DHCP server.
Make it sound so horrible.
It does. It took a long time to figure out what was going on.
Okay. So you probably know enough about these by now to know. Yeah, you know enough about them to get through the questions that they're going to throw at you. So this is the known ports range, and most ports will fall under that category. Most popular are in the first 1,024 ports. HTTPS is encrypted HTTP. And of course, a page can have HTTPS but not actually be encrypted correctly or have a verified certificate. Not having a verified certificate does not necessarily mean that it's not secure, but it's not guaranteed that it's secure. So, if you're going to a site and you're putting a credit card in, make sure it's verified. by a site such as VeriSign. And that's big bucks too to get that in place. Proxy server enables multiple connections to the internet to go through one protected PC. In addition, a proxy server can be used for filtering purposes. Sometimes you'll have a proxy server on the network that you can use, I don't know, to block websites that you don't want people going to.
Websites for your data connection. Again, 2 bucks before we use ICS.
Now, of course, technically a proxy server doesn't have to be physically between your device and the internet. You can direct it if it's internal, but the point they're making is that at the other end of the proxy server, it leads to the internet. And by default, they must be configured to use the proxy server. However, if the proxy server is physically between it, then you can do the filtering and they don't have a choice, which is generally why enterprise routers have the filtering built in. You don't even need to set that up. It's in internet properties. 4 categories. You'll probably be tested on the 4 categories and what falls under the categories. So internet is anything on the internet. Local intranet is any network resources that are internal to your network. And then trusted sites are manually entered in sites that you trust. Restricted sites is any sites that you don't want allowed that are manually entered in. These can also be entered in group policy being deployed. And then of course you can restrict in-group policy if they can change it or not, which if you're setting it, you obviously would set them to not be able to do it unless they're like an IT admin or something. Need I say more? Just gonna kind of keep going. These are the 3 most common email protocols: POP3, IMAP, and SMTP. Just know that POP3 and IMAP are for receiving and SMTP is for sending. IMAP is better than POP3. It has more services and it's actually easier to configure as well. Most popular programs right now, Outlook and Thunderbird. I haven't seen people actually use Thunderbird, but it's actually kind of nice. It has a lot of add-ons that you can plug into it, and it's free. So, and that's what Windows Live Mail looks like. Same thing. If you have any custom settings, you would need to set them here. You can always go back and change them later, but it's always easier just doing it the first time. And a lot of times you want to do it by DNS name in case the IP address changes. FTP server. FTP is not secure at all, so it should not be used ever, unless security is not a concern. Like if you have a public server where you're sharing files read-only to anonymous users, then that would be one case. But you don't want secure is not even a word to begin to describe FTP because it transmits usernames and passwords in clear text. Kind of defeats the purpose. By default, they do not allow anonymous login, and they make it hard to allow it on purpose. So this is FileZilla, one of the most common programs, also free. And you can tell which side it is. Local site, so that's the computer you're on. Remote site, that's what you're connected to. And then up here just shows messages such as connections, file transfers. Oh, this is not about that program, just the protocol. Telnet's unencrypted as well, which is why it's not used. SSH is encrypted. It's the replacement for Telnet, and you can also use it for VPN connections and SFTP, which is their secure SFTP, or secure FTP, rather. So you're using SSH to connect to an FTP server. Well, you don't enable FTP, you just enable SSH, and then you tell it you're connecting via SFTP, creates a connection. And it works well. Their site doesn't look anything like that anymore. And it still is common, SIP. But VoIP has replaced it primarily, mostly because of how easy it is. It just plugs into your existing wired network. Alright, we're almost there. So Vonage is nice, we used to have that as our VoIP phone provider. Now we use Uma, which is nice as well. I think it's something like $15 a month for the phone. And then we don't have cable. So we don't need it. I mean, all we do is watch Netflix over the internet. So it's like, you got your internet, you got your internet phone. What else do you need? No. You're already spoiled if you compare our generation to what yours was. Like, I'm bored. Go outside. Now we're like, no. Go look at some memes. Type VNC. So, that's just the ability to connect to a VNC server, and anything can become a VNC server, client or server. So if you have a Windows 7, you can start up a VNC server. It's very lightweight. It works pretty well. RDP is better if you have the option because the authentication is stronger, and it has more capability to integrate with existing features such as Active Directory. Or if you don't have that, you can use local user authentication or workgroups as well. And there's always TeamViewer, which works well, and that's secure as well. The nice thing about remote assistance is you can take control of the PC remotely, but you need someone physically present at the other machine to allow permission to get in. But it's really easy, which is cool. And that person can actually watch you as you're doing it. Remote desktop locks the screen of the physical machine and doesn't allow the other person to see, which is part of the reason why TeamViewer is kind of nice. Now, we might ask about these, but realistically, the most common one is IPsec. Because it's compatible with almost everything, and it's really easy to set up on pretty much any OS. Even the dreadful Fedora. I don't want to go too far before I could get carried away here. Okay, I'm going to just quickly explain it. So there's two types of VPN connections, primarily. There's site-to-site VPN, and there's client-to-site. Site-to-site is a direct connection between two VPN servers that will allow communication between the two networks, generally over the internet or WAN connection. Client to VPN is common when you have remote users such as salespeople that connect in and access resources. So both are very common, but site-to-site is only common when you have multiple locations for your business. SNMP allows you to send network notifications to a server, such as let's say your internet connection goes down on a certain interface. Generally, this is used on routers. If one of the interfaces on it goes down, it'll send a message out to that server saying, oh, one of my interfaces went down. Now you see the flaw here is that if you only have two interfaces or whatever, a LAN and a WAN, and the LAN goes down, it's going to try to send a message out to the server saying that it's down, but it's never going to get it because the interface is down. So it comes to use when you have a router with multiple interfaces. And
usually have emails and
no, not SNMP. You can do it on the server, but you can't do it on the routers or the switches. It's just not something that SNMP is capable of. It's a totally different service altogether. That's SMTP, which would be what you would use to send an email. Samba, which is also known as SIPs. Just allows non-Windows operating systems to access Windows shares. I'm gonna okay. Most of the time, it's the client that has problems, not the actual internet itself. So yeah, the internet's down. Oh, the internet's fine. It's just you. Most of the time. And that is not a typical setup. They forgot to include the actual internet in the setup. All they're doing is connecting to each other. But I guess technically that would symbolize the internet being down if it never has a connection to begin with. So you can flush the DNS. I'm pretty sure that's not a real thing. So you can use the diagnose utility, which sometimes works. I found it does work on wireless connections. This will
disconnects and reconnects.
Yeah. Not necessarily. All limited means is that you're connected to a network, but not the internet. That's all it means. It literally has nothing to do with DHCP. It could be a DHCP problem, but it's not necessarily that.
That seems to be very common.
Yeah. I haven't had to do it since we got rid of our router, installed the pfSense box. Problem solved.
Did you have problems before?
Some of our older routers, yeah. We had problems with them not keeping a consistent connection to the internet. Wireless would work, but not connection. It would drop. It's silly. So we got a new router, which worked fine. And I'm like, hey, why don't we put a PFSense in?
PFSense. Explain that to me.
Okay, so a PFSense router, basically, you take a ISO, you bring it to a disk, and you install PFSense, which is based on FreeBSD. You install it on a physical desktop, and you put 2 or more NICs in this desktop, and then that PFSense box becomes the gateway for your network. So you take one cable, you plug it into your modem, you take the other cable, plug it into your network. So it becomes your gateway, and you can do advanced tasks like routing. You could do filtering.
It's a Linux-based
Hmm?
It's a Linux-based thing.
Yeah.
So it's your
Is
it the firewall too? Somebody
Yes.
did my lab, wasn't
Yes, I think. I don't know.
it? I think we do have PFSense.
Maybe it's really cool. I would highly suggest trying it out in a VM. Have like 2 VMs going, have a Windows 7 and then have a PFSense. Set the Windows 7 to a host-only network, and then set one adapter on the PFSense to host-only, so they share the same network, but Windows 7 can't get out without going through the PFSense. So you set up 2 virtual adapters. One adapter goes out to the internet, bridged adapter, and then the other one is host-only, so you share the network. And then you can test out the configurations on that virtual box. Oh, full circle. So you can test it that way. It's really cool. But they have enterprise solutions like physical boxes you can buy from them if you want to do an enterprise. And I probably would.
How long have you had it run without issue?
Months. So our access point is connected to the LAN. It doesn't act as a gateway at all. So literally, we just have a switch. PFSense comes in, and then everything else comes into the switch too. And the PFSense is DHCP, DNS. It's the router firewall. It also does filtering, blocks ads. But that we added in. I added in. So it's like I'll go to a site and there's these giant blank spots where the ads normally are. I just kind of laugh. Oh yeah, it was funny. The first time I implemented that software, the actual filtering software, it was broken like crazy because I went overboard with it, and then I had to throttle it back because like it was blocking scripts that were preventing the page from loading. Okay. Yeah, everyone knows that. We literally just said that. Oh, QoS. So QoS enables you to throttle bandwidth based upon services or IP addresses / devices. So let's say you have a Windows 2012 server and you have, 200 clients or whatever on your local network. You obviously want to give that server priority over the bandwidth of the clients. If you have like a web server being hosted, you want to make sure that the clients are dragging down the connection that outside people could potentially use. So you prioritize. You tell QoS, okay, this is how fast my connection is, and this is boom, boom, boom. These are the clients that I want to have priority. You can additionally say, this is what I want priority, and everything else is below it, basically. So it's kind of cool. A lot of times businesses will implement this and say, okay, I have my server and I have my VoIP phone system, and I want those to take priority. So if someone starts sucking up bandwidth, then we don't lose quality on our phone calls. So things like that. Yep. So that's kind of what it looks like. A lot of times, the routers will even have known services. So they might have Steam or World of Warcraft will be a service, and usually they have a port assigned to it, like Doom is 666. It actually is. Wow. Oh, I am good. IRC. Some CS source. Actually, still looks pretty good. Anyway.
That's one game I can never do.
No, I can't get myself to do it. It's just.
What's amusing is.
It's a paid game. Subscription monthly base. I can't get myself to pay for it monthly.
A Boy Scout troop Scoutmaster is older than me, and he's just all in. Just amazing. UTNC's guy is going to show up.
You're like, I don't get it, dude. It looks kind of cool, but I don't understand the significance that. You can show it to me, and I know you think it's cool, but I don't get how cool it really is because I don't play it.